Welcome once again to Goulet Q&A. This is episode number 325, and I'm Brian Goulet. You know, this is a place where fountain pens are still a thing. And today, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about yellow inks and if they write drier than other ink colors. I'll be telling my newbie self 10 traps to avoid to start out in fountain pens that could have made things more enjoyable. Picking some inks to match One Pen Fan's massive new haul, showing my pen catalog spreadsheet, which I think you'll appreciate, the things that I keep track of, how I keep it organized. Talk about some good books that I've read that have helped Goulet Pens to grow to what it is. And I'm going to be spotlighting the new Ferris Wheel Press Lord of the Rings licensed pen and ink sets. It's going to be a good episode. I'm excited about it. So without further ado, let's get into feedback. All right, I'll be honest with y'all, I got a lot of feedback today. I just felt like sharing a lot. There's a lot of really good stuff. So let's do it. Fountain Pen Nexus Wizard says, thanks, Brian, for your reply. This is in regards to the brass cartridge question from last week's episode. I asked for feedback if it was helpful, and I got it. All right. Brass cartridge stoppers problem solved. I deleted my comment because I realized I'd made a mistake. Oh no. There's no evidence now. It looks like I just made up the question. Okay, anyway. I wanted to avoid misleading others. And then I saw that you responded in the Q&A. Whoops. Here's what happened. The first pen broken was a Jinhao. The cartridge had a standard diameter, not the Jinhao. So maybe it was that like Chinese standard international or whatever it is that we talked about before. I forced it and broke the inner tube of the feed. I also cracked the cartridge. So standard international cartridge, bigger than standard feed. There you go. Didn't work out. For the second pen, it's even weirder. I wanted to try the brass cartridge stopper again. I took another pen. I forced it. The cartridge didn't hold. I tried with a converter, but it didn't hold either. I deduced that I had broken the feed. I realized later that the pen was actually a Parker, which is not standard international. I put in a Parker cartridge and the pen worked perfectly. The feed wasn't broken. I made these mistakes even though I have a lot of experience with fountain pens. The brain works strangely. I misinterpreted reality. In fact, the brass stopper works perfectly. There's a size for each brand and you have to be careful. Thank you again, Brian, for taking the time to answer my question. You know what? I think we all have these moments. I know I, for one, am very fountain pen experienced, and I still have these types of things happen to me. So, you know what? It allowed me to answer the question well. Still got to talk about, you know, brass stoppers and hot glue for the end of your cartridges. So it all worked out well, but I do really appreciate you following up because I did not know what was going on. And there we go. I think we all understand it more clearly now. So thank you for that. Jess53NZ says, the information on pens in the heat was fascinating because I talked about that last week. Never would have occurred to me. You said bulb syringe literally as I picked mine up to clean a pen and had no plan to clean a pen today. There you go. Great minds think alike, I guess, huh? That's really cool. Gene Curl 6284 says, in addition to the air expanding when a pen heats up, same question from last week, as temperature increases, viscosity decreases. So the ink gets thinner, I guess, which would cause the ink to more easily flow from the feed. As far as whether the specific ink matters, it depends on a lot of factors. Most importantly, the intermolecular forces on the molecules that make up the ink. Wow, that is getting into things that I don't understand. But I guess that makes sense. You know, if you are freezing water or ink, it expands, right? Like water expands when it freezes. But it would make sense that the opposite is true. The hotter it gets, the more, well, I don't know, maybe that's a condensing thing. I don't know. But viscosity. I don't really know this, but you know what? You brought up a good point. I don't know if a pen sitting out in the heat would cause the ink to become less viscous, but I bet it's a factor. You know, it's a factor, right? I mentioned last week that there's a lot of different factors. Anyway, DK21680 says, for me, the extremely enjoying and fun part of this video was the Sheaffer Legacy new fountain pen review. Thanks a lot. Perhaps it's the first review of this pen on YouTube. I don't know. It's a relatively new pen, so maybe not a lot of people have talked about it yet. Other people were dumping all over it because they were like, this is not a gold nib. This is unacceptable. How dare they? What a piece of garbage. You know what? I would expect nothing less, especially if you're hardcore vintage and, yes, you can get vintage pens for more affordable, but they're not making any more. So they're going to be fewer and further between. It's not going to be the same thing, but the pen still rates pretty well. So, gotta love the pen world. Everybody's got an opinion and they're all present. Sod F Mad Miss. Okay. I pronounced that wrong, but whatever. I truly love your video. If there's an official subtitle, it'll be fantastic. Okay. So yes, subtitling a Q&A, without using like some kind of AI, which I don't know if that means it's official or not. YouTube automatically does their own kind of subtitle stuff. YouTube now has something. I have not turned it on yet because it concerns me how valid it would be. But I believe that YouTube now has an option where you can have it automatically dub your audio in foreign languages, in other languages not than what you speak. And it will auto AI your mouth to make it look like you're saying those words in the foreign language. Now, I've known that this capability is there with other programs, like other video programs and stuff like that, because AI is, a thing. But I did not know that YouTube has that like natively built in. I don't know if it's beta tested or whatever right now, but you're going to start to see that more now. You're going to start to see that happening. It weirds me out because it's like I'm sort of deep faking myself at that point, and I don't speak foreign languages, so I would fully trust that YouTube would get all the nuances of all the pen language and everything, and be able to do that and not have me saying some kind of extremely incorrect or offensive thing in another language that I may be completely unaware of, and have it literally look like my mouth is saying it. That weirds me out a little bit. But anyway, that's a thing that's happening now. It's fun. 2025, seeing the things that we get to be involved in. Anyway, but actually going through and like subtitling the entire video is not feasible for us at the moment, but I understand the desire, especially for something as long as a Q&A. It would take a really long time, but I appreciate the sentiment. Tony Proctors says, hey, Brian, I believe, going to the Schaefer, I believe that nib is called an Imperial nib. Great Q&A. Well, thank you, Tony. That would make sense. I know the Schaefer Imperial is a model, a classic model of Schaefer. This is where I don't know my vintage history proper. I would have to research it a little bit more to totally validate all that. That would make sense to me, but I have not researched it yet. But yeah, anyway, I know it's an inlaid nib. That's like the more generic term, but I will trust you. I know you know your pens, Tony. I'll trust that is correct. But just know that I've not verified it. Anyway, Lisa Ann Art says, I would love 2 videos for the pinks and magentas. I normally buy hot pinks like Hope Pink and pinks from Iroshizuku. Thanks so much. I got a lot of feedback about this, whether I should do one pink ink showdown or split it into pinks, like hot pinks and magentas. It was very clear y'all want separate videos. That's why I asked. I'm really glad. Honestly, it makes it easier for me. That's just more inks to get to play with and more videos I get to make. So good. I've got that on the docket. I'll probably shoot that in the next several weeks. No firm schedule on that, but just know that will be coming at some point. Janae is going to help me pick the colors because she loves pink inks. All right. And then No Regrets Guitars says, Brian, great video. For those of us who are spreadsheet challenged, can you make available for download a copy of your spreadsheet for us to catalog our pens to? I would have to do some stuff to make that feasible, but let me think about it. I don't know how that would actually happen. Downloading spreadsheets is something that is easily a way that gets viruses on your computer. So I would have to figure out how to do that safely. Obviously I wouldn't put a virus into it, but I know that is a common way that it's happened. Anyway, I'm going to show you a version of what I've done today. So I will at least give you something. It's not the most complicated thing in the world, but there's all a few things on there. But anyway, I'm going to talk about it today. I got a few questions about managing my catalog. So I will show that today. I don't know if I've ever shown it before. So, and then last question, this is from our feedback. Just Nick 8727 says, was that a PRS Tremonti? Well, it's talking about the guitar. And I'm guessing this is from the clip that was in the, when I was showing the Menace. Yes, that was a PRS. It was technically the SE version, the more affordable version. The full version is like, it's amazing, but it's like $5,000 or something. I did not pay that. But yeah, it's a great guitar. I have really enjoyed it. It's my only electric guitar and I love it. It plays really well. I like it. I feel like I can play like Mark Tremonti when I play it. Not really. He's a phenomenal guitarist. Anyway, let's get into some new stuff. All right, first new thing I got to talk about. I'm going to touch on it, but we're going to cover it later in the spotlight today. It is the Ferris Wheel Press Bijou Lord of the Rings pens that come in a set with ink as well as the inks standalone. So it's Lord of the Rings officially licensed. And if you know Ferris Wheel Press, their packaging is phenomenal anyway. So when you match this up, it's like, I can't think of a better brand to have them match up with than Lord of the Rings to fit their vibe, right? So it's really cool. Now the Bijou is not a pen that we normally carry. It's kind of a thinner pen. You know, it technically posts, but if you like twist it, it's got metal threads. So if you like twist it on the body, you can scratch it. So that like concerns me a little bit. So I don't normally like want to deal with that pen. We carry the other one, the Marquis. But you know what? This is the version that it comes in. And for the aesthetics of it, the ring as the center band on the thing, it just makes sense. So either way, that's what they offered. So that's what we're carrying. The pen and ink set. So it's the pen itself with a 28 ml bottle of ink, all custom design. And literally like the grips on each pen are different. So I'm sorry, I'm getting more into it. Pen and ink sets, $200 for the pen and ink set. 10 ml ink bottle, tiny little one, but with cool packaging. That'd make for a great gift, like a good stocking stuffer or something. $15 for that. And they have 28 ml bottles of ink, which if you want more of the ink, you know, $35 for that one. So anyway, I will talk more about those later, but just know that we have them for sale now at Goulet Pens. Also, I teased out the LAMY Studio Orion last week. I did end up getting a video out like I promised, and now it's out. And now the pen is launched. So you can go pick those up. Pretty interesting color. Nice matte finish, just like, you know, many of the other studios have been. It's not the glossy version, which they have some of those. Anyway, that one is just under $80. Extra fine, fine, medium, and broad. They haven't always done the broads with these special editions. So that's kind of cool that they're doing that. If you're interested in broads. It comes with a converter, standard LAMY affair. Yeah, I think that's about it. So you can check out the full video on that if you haven't seen it already. I compare it to some other LAMY pen colors because this one is a weird one. It's very much in between like a brown and a purple. So I compare it to some other pens that help give it some grounding in terms of where it is in the color spectrum. And then some inks that match up really well, which there's a few of them. A lot of good colors in this range. And then last thing I have that's new right now is a new ink. Prior Reserve. This is a Ride the Lightning. This is a limited ink. They're only doing 1,500 bottles, which 1,500 sounds like a lot, but for ink, it's maybe not that much. So it's a deep violet purple base with a subtle golden shimmer. It is a 60 ml glass vessel, as they call it. Pretty big volume of ink there for $25. So that is cool. We will have some stuff on that, some swabs and all that. I don't think we're sampling the ink just because it's limited, and we don't typically sample limited edition inks, but we'll see. Okay, that's it for new stuff. Let's do a couple of quick company updates, and then I've got your questions for you. All right, first off, this is a thing that we sent out an email. We've had on our website. So LAMY has been doing like a clearing. They had, you know, some overstock of some discontinued items. So they passed on some savings. So we have some deals that we typically never get to do on some LAMY products. Now, pickings may be slimmer because we launched this, I think it was on Tuesday. I can't remember. It all blurs together. I'm filming this on Tuesday. I should remember. Anyway, it's all blur. But it's a first come, first serve thing. We can't really restock. So once it's gone, it's gone. So whatever we have there, go check it out. It's all kinds of random pens and stuff like that. We've had some good deals. The Rose Studio went like immediately. But we have some other ones. We have plenty of like the dark brown studios, which look really nice. Anyway, we got that. So go check that out. It will be I don't know if they'll ever do this again kind of a thing. It was like very much of a one-time thing. And then I have a video out for the Diplomat Viper, which I've been meaning to get out for a whole year, but we've not had great stock of it. And I didn't want to just like get everybody excited about a pen and then not have it and have you get really mad. So finally waited until I restarted. I probably could have gotten it out at some other point, but we got the brown one, but still there wasn't good stock of the brown. So it's like once we got decent stock of the black and the blue one, then we didn't have good stock of the brown one. Hopefully that's getting worked out with it's largely a good problem. It's just sold better than what Diplomat anticipated. They only have so much capacity to produce this particular pen. And they're like, yeah, we've been maxed out all year. So it's like, well, that's a good problem to have. But now they got a cool green one and it looks great. And I'm showing you all 4 colors and what inks to match with them. So it's a pretty thorough video. I recommend you go check that one out. But either way, we have the Vipers right now. Get them while we have them because they'll slither away and be hard to catch. That was a dumb pun. Anyway, let's do some questions. Question number 1. This is from Amit, TH3XL. Couldn't tell if that was leet speak there. It may be. Off the back of the lubricated ink versus ink flow confusion, I did a test with Diamine Amber. This might have been a couple of weeks ago. I did a test with Diamine Amber, which is a lighter yellow color. I found this ink to feel really dry to write with out of pens with plastic feeds. So I tried a couple of pens with ebonite feeds. While the ink flowed marginally better, I feel that it's just a dry ink. Then I tried Pilot Iroshizuku Toro in the ebonite feed pens, and it felt a bit dry too. Have you found that yellowish inks tend to feel drier than other colors of the same brand and series? I haven't like sat down and tested this scientifically, like with a hypothesis in mind of what you proposed here. But I've thought about some of the yellows I've used. Being honest, I don't use yellows all the time because I don't necessarily have a practical use for them. And I like darker saturated colors. So yellows are not usually my go-tos personally. But I've used a bunch, especially for various like showcasing purposes and videos and writing samples and stuff like that. But yeah, I do feel like just kind of anecdotally, based on my recollection, that yellows, maybe yellow greens, some yellow oranges, I would say they tend to write a bit on the dry side. I can't say that's always the case. Like, wow, this is so obvious. But as I think about it, I feel like that might be the case. Now, it's not always true. I know Diamine Golden Sands is pretty wet, but that's a shimmering ink. So maybe it's got some like extra lubricant added in there to help with the shimmer. That might be an exception. I'm trying to think of other yellow inks that I've used. I mean, some of like the Noodler's like orangey kind of inks with some yellow. Southwest Sunset I'm thinking about. That one's pretty wet, but I don't know if you consider that a true yellow. That's kind of more of an orange. I don't know. But I also don't know if it's maybe just because the ink is a much lighter color. Maybe it's harder to tell if it's still wet. Like maybe it seems like it's drying quicker. Or it might be a visual thing, maybe the feel. So I don't know if you're talking about like the feel of it, does it feel drier? Or is it just like the volume of ink or the saturation of the ink on the page? Does it maybe seem drier? So I don't really know. My take generally is that, yes, somewhat the yellows seem to be a little bit drier, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case or it's more of a perception thing. So it's got me curious. I have not had time to like test this or anything. I can't even promise that I will. We're doing like mid-year evaluations here. And so I'm putting a lot of extra time for my team and my kids are in school and all this kind of stuff. But I don't have a lot of extra time to play with and ink up like a whole bunch of yellow inks. But I don't know. I'd be kind of curious. I guess I could use a glass pen, but that's not really necessarily the most accurate way to, especially to understand the flow. Anyway, I'm curious what y'all think. Have y'all used yellow inks? Do you think that they write drier? If you're really curious, maybe test it out. I don't know. I thought it was an interesting question. It made me think. I didn't have a good answer to give after I thought, but I thought I would at least think on camera and then put it on you guys to do the work. I'm just kidding. But I don't know. It's curious. I'm curious about some comments. Let's get some comments going and see what y'all think about dryness related to yellowness of ink. Next question. This is from Mellow Jello, not Mellow Yellow, even though we just talked about yellows. Mellow Jello says, Brian, great Q&A segment about your lessons of the fountain pen journey. What do you find are the 10 traps to avoid for your past self to curate the most enjoyable fountain pen, ink, and paper collection? So I liked this question. I thought this actually could make for a pretty good standalone video topic. So I was like, maybe I should put some thought into this because, if y'all like this, that certainly would be a good future topic. So that was part of my motive. Also, I thought it was a bit of a challenge because it was like, I don't want to just have this be a rephrased version of the question that I already answered. So I tried to answer it in a different way. So this is coming a little bit more from the negative, but I tried to think of different stuff. Now that I am sitting here telling you that, I'm realizing I didn't go back and look at what I wrote previously to absolutely make sure that it was different. So there may be some overlap, but either way, I'm saying it in a different way. Why don't I just say the stuff and stop setting it up? So I have 10 different things. I will say, I did not put as much thought and dedication into it as I would if I were doing a full standalone video on it. So there may be some things to tweak here and there, but this is where I would really love some of y'all's feedback too. If there are other things that you would give advice to your past self or your newer fountain pen self as you're starting out in the hobby, what traps to avoid that keep you from getting the most enjoyment possible. You could rephrase that and say, what are the things that you would, do? Well, I guess it is kind of asking two different things than asking, what are 10 things that would make it make it the most enjoyable? I don't know. Depends how many things. If there's at least 20 things you're talking about, then there could be no overlap. Anyway, shut up, Brian, and talk about the items. Okay. Okay, first thing that I had, this isn't necessarily in a particular order, but I did kind of sort of go in order of the most important things I would get across first, and then maybe get a little more specific and obscure towards the end. Okay, first thing, my advice to myself would be to master pen cleaning before you go inking everything up and use a bulb syringe. Pen cleaning will be as much of your life as pen inking. It's sort of like I'm giving this advice to myself because I came over from woodworking, and this is something I think about a lot. Every woodworker, the sanding steps in woodworking is the thing that no one wants to do, but it takes a lot of time and it really makes a big difference in terms of how it looks and your overall finish of the project. But everybody hates sanding. So I would explain that to my younger self, just like that. It's just like sanding. Don't avoid it. Don't try to cut corners on it. You just know that this is a part of the process of enjoying the thing and find a way to really enjoy it. So for me, it would be don't view pen cleaning as a chore, view it as an opportunity, because I can say now, having all this experience, when I clean my pens, I get to know my pens, especially if there's some level of disassembly that I'm doing or maintenance or something. That's where I get to know my pens the most. And I get to know where the nooks and crannies are for, in certain inks, if they really cling on or something like that. I really get to know a lot through the pen cleaning process. So, I literally over lunch, you're going to see it. My hands are kind of blue. I cleaned 5 pens over lunch today, and it was just stuff that I'm proud of myself because I actually cleaned pens that were not completely dried out. It was ones that I've used in a couple of videos recently. And it's okay, these are still good to ink, but I'm probably not going to pick these ones because I have 50 pens inked up right now. It's let me go ahead and clean these out before it gets too bad. And I'm glad I did, but I did get my fingers all inky. Anyway, so there you go. That is my advice. Find a way to work pen cleaning into your ritual, if you will, of the pen usage process. And, one thing that I do now, I will either record it or I don't do this as much recently. I used to do a lot of Instagram lives and stuff like that when I would clean pens. I haven't done that as much recently, but I did hundreds of those back in the day. The thing that I will do now is I will put on a good podcast, or I will listen to an audiobook or something like that, and just kind of make it I'm using my brain, but not totally. I can be focused, but I can kind of go in and out. So yeah, that's what I like to do. It's kind of like some of my me time. Anyway, number 2, spending more money on a pen doesn't mean necessarily that you will enjoy it more. So I had this happen a couple of times. It's like anything else. There's a law of diminishing returns, but also there's some things that like I think I would really like. So I spend money on it, especially in the very beginning, getting into certain gold nibs. Not all gold nibs write the same. Not all gold nibs are necessarily better for you than all steel nibs. So it can be really hit or miss. And it takes a while to kind of figure that out. So I would say like start small, get to know all the different types of nibs. Don't go nuts buying something that's like way out of your range, thinking that it's going to be so amazing, because I remember doing that. And then I was disappointed. And then I was disappointed, not necessarily in the pen, but disappointed in myself that like I kind of knew that, but then I did it anyway, but then I had my expectations high. And then I was disappointed that I was disappointed about my expectations being high. Does that make sense? I don't know. Maybe I'm in my own head about it, but that's my younger self. Now I'm much more chill. All right, number 3, start with ink samples. Don't buy bottles. I could just stop it right there, but don't buy bottles unless you know that you want that ink. I definitely have a lot of bottles of ink, and especially because, like, let's be honest, I work at a pen company. There's a lot of times it's like, okay, I'll just grab a bottle because I know I'm going to use it a bunch, whatever. I have certain bottles that I've used once and then never opened it back up again because I have like 250 bottles over there. It's ridiculous. Now I do keep a lot of like limited editions and things like that are harder to get. So there are some for historical reference that I will keep. But yeah, just practically speaking, use samples. And then, there were so many bottles that I bought early on where I was like, I'm sure I'm going to like this color. It's called Midnight Blue or something like that. It's going to be great. And then I try it and I'm like, oh, this is more of a cobalt. It's not as dark as I wanted it to be. And now I have this whole bottle. And what am I going to do? I've revisited some of those inks and I learned to appreciate them for what they are, but samples are just the way to go. All right, next one. Number 4, don't concern yourself with vintage pens unless you can try them in person, like at a pen show. Now, there's certainly ones that you can buy online and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that like that's a bad thing to do. For me personally, I wanted to try as many different things as I could. I had a lot of experiences where I bought vintage pens because I read or heard about certain things, but I didn't really know enough about anything to even know what I was getting. Or like I did a trade or something like that through Fountain Pen Network, which like those are all great ways to go about it. And there's like Instagram didn't exist back when I was doing this, but when I started out, but now it's a thing you can like trade and you can do stuff like that. And that's pretty neat. But I will say like most of the times I get a vintage pen and it turns out like, oh, this vintage Schaefer, turns out there were like 90 variants of it. And the one that I got, I don't even know because it's not marked. So now I end up being more confused than anything else. You got to kind of go narrow with vintage because it's so deep. Every single model of pen like goes so deep that if you take the approach like I did, which was like, I want to try a little bit of everything. You can't really do that in the vintage world without serious commitment. And I wasn't committed to it that seriously. So yeah, there you go. So trial by error, learning in the vintage world is difficult unless you have like somebody kind of guiding you through it. So I have a lot of vintage pens where it's like, yeah, this is that model, but it's some weird variant of it. And I don't really know what I've learned as a result of getting this weird thing. Okay. Let's see here. Next one I had was number 5. Writing with flex nibs is not for everyone, especially the impatient. Get a cheap one to try and make sure that you like that one before you spend more. This is the same thing. Now, granted, my situation was 2009, 2010, as I was getting into pens. There was no inexpensive flex pen. The only thing you could get was like Falcon or something vintage. The vintage stuff was really confusing because, it requires a lot of expertise and there were, nibs were even more complicated than just the whole pen. And then, then more inexpensive options came out, which was like revolutionary at the time. And actually I ended up using, I did get 1 or 2 pens that I think were vintage that I think were supposed to have flex, but they definitely weren't as flexy as what I thought they were supposed to be. So I spent several $100s on some vintage pens and ended up being disappointed because they either didn't have the flex that I wanted or I didn't like the way that it wrote particularly. So once the inexpensive flex pens came out, I was like, okay, now I feel like I can really mash it down and I'm not going to break anything. And then I did, and I'm like, this is really cool, but I'm not patient enough to do it well. And my handwriting is like, it's okay. If I practice it more, I'm sure I would enjoy it. But I gotta go. I want to write. So anyway, that would be my advice. Number 6, high maintenance inks are best left out of hard to clean pens like pistons and vac fillers. If you got like shimmer inks and high sheens and stuff like that, keep it in a cartridge converter, or a pen that you can easily disassemble, like a TWSBI Eco or something like that. I'll throw anything in Eco because I can unscrew the back of that thing and I can flush it with a bulb syringe just like I would a cartridge converter. In fact, I did that today. That was one of the pens I cleaned, was a pen that I had let some very dark blue ink sit in there, and it had some stuff that it left in the Eco, and I was able to open the back and use a Q-tip and swab it out and all that kind of stuff. So it worked out great. Looks like brand new now. But yeah, some pens you can't really do that, ones that don't disassemble and have, I hate doing just like the screwing and unscrewing 1,000 times over. I'm like, this is killing me. So yeah, those pens, I'll still use them, but I will dedicate, one ink or one ink color family and then not use anything too crazy in there so that I don't have to like thorough deep clean out every single time pens where I feel like I have to twist it 30 times over again. That's number 6. Okay, number 7, only carry metal pens in your pocket. Unless there isn't a pen sleeve, because they will get beat up. And I say metal pens like not pens with finishes on them even. But basically carry durable pens and pens that you don't mind getting micro scratches on in your pockets. So I did this plenty. In fact, my first, I have a black matte Vanishing Point that I did this with a little bit. This was the original one. They've actually made the finish even a little better now. It's a little more durable. But the original one, definitely you could actually scratch away some of the black and see some of the brass on it. If you look at old ones that people have, I'm sure you'll find some where some of the brassing has happened. That's not very common anymore. They fixed that like a year into launching that pen, and it's been a long time now. Over a decade. But yeah, I definitely have had other pens where I'll keep it in my pocket, even if it's clipped in there, if it's next to my pocket knife or something and it's rubbing or, whatever. I'm constantly brushing up against stuff, against the car door, or against the wall or whatever. I'm apparently not a very good walker. I'm a wide person. So a lot of times I will hit my shoulders on door jambs and I will do things like that on the regular basis. And that definitely happens sometimes with my hip. And then I definitely have had it where, the clip of the pen or the top of it will like hit something, or like kitchen cabinets and stuff like that, like getting it caught and stuff like that. Arm chairs like this, like I've got an arm. Sometimes when I sit, if I do it in a weird way, the clip of the pen can just like catch that arm and kind of do that. Anyway, so yeah, be cognizant of the pens that you're keeping in your pockets, unless you put it in a pen sleeve, and then you can pretty much do whatever you want. I got 3 more. And number 8, anticipate that any paper marketed as recycled or eco-friendly is going to be subpar for fountain pens. Now, the best that I've used has been that Rhodia green pad. I think I showed it recently. It's still not the same as a regular Rhodia pad, but it's not bad. Most everything else that we've ever used here, I have like a whole graveyard of paper samples that are all recycled stuff that say fountain pen friendly, even some of them. And we go and use it and we're like, yeah, this is not going to cut it. Not going to cut it. It's usually too absorbent, right? Which I don't know. I don't know the paper making process to know exactly what that is, because I know there's different ways that you can address that. Some of it has to do with doing like the binders and stuff that are in there. Some of it has to do with the sizing that they put in the coating and how much clay content is in there. But anyway, it's a thing. But it's very difficult, apparently, to get recycled paper that is not super, super absorbent. Okay. Number 9, it's fine to get new notebooks. That's great. But maybe stick with finishing the ones you've already started before you start using the new ones. In parentheses, I put, basically, my life is a mess across all my notebooks. Now, this might be unique to me. It's probably not unique to me, actually, because people that like notebooks, and you know who you are, you probably have too many notebooks already, and you're probably looking at others already. I justified it, just like we all do. I justified it as, well, it's my job to know these different notebooks. I got to test out different papers, and I got to test all these different things. But what ended up happening is I would try to use it, and I'll be like, oh, okay, this one's going to be for, one's for my kids. This one's going to be for like doctor's offices. This one's going to be for journaling my thoughts or brainstorming business ideas or, whatever. And then I kind of forget which ones I dedicated to which. And this is probably just my general mismanagement and disorganized nature. I ended up with like bits and pieces of my life with all over the place and different dates. So it's like, if my kids ever, if I'm long for this world and my kids are ever going through my notebooks one day, trying to understand me, they probably won't even bother because I've got hundreds of hours of video of myself, and they'll be like, this is more than I already wanted to know. But if they ever want to look through my notebooks, good luck. It's going to be like detective work trying to, I don't know. They'll probably upload it into the cloud and have AI read through it and give me a summary. They'll be like, wow, this guy was a piece of work. But if they ever want to look through it all, I got fragments of my life in all kinds of different notebooks with different timelines, and I pick them up and I drop them off and I put them in a drawer somewhere and I can't find it. So I start using another one. It's a total disaster. So that would be my thing. I doubt telling myself that would make any difference at all because I've already known that for a very long time and I still am not any better about it. I'm just kidding. I am more dedicated now. I keep a couple in like notebooks. Like I do keep, a traveler's, regular size. And I keep several Goulet notebooks in there. And largely, I am keeping that. But I have different notebooks for different purposes. So I don't know. I got so much on my mind that I want to write down that I just end up doing it wherever I am. And last but not least, this one's more timely. Think of pen storage, labeling, and a catalog system now before it gets out of hand. So I should have foreseen this one coming because I was in the pen business, that I would end up acquiring quite a number of pens, and that maybe I would not remember every detail of every pen as it gets on and on and on and on. And then maybe I wouldn't remember where I put it last. I got there, I've gotten there. My system now is reflective of how organized I'm required to keep it, because otherwise it would be chaos. And even it is a bit of chaos. But I've spent a lot of time organizing it now with having a pretty big catalog of pens. And so it would be way easier to manage that with fewer pens. And being realistic, y'all have fewer pens to manage, most likely than what I've got, because I have a huge pen problem. But yeah, those are my 10 things. So would that make an interesting standalone video? I don't know. Maybe I'd have to polish it up a little bit. I might tweak a few of these, come up with it, but we'll see. I could see some dramatic reenactments of younger Brian. I could put on like a bald cap with like a shaved head, not shaved, like shaved, but like I would cut my own hair back in the day because it was cheap and fast. So I don't do that anymore. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? Number 3 question in the overall. I just did a list, but that list is done. Now we're moving on to the next question. So this is from Molten Cucumber 6514. I hope you're okay with me sharing this, but you typed it out and it was public. So anyway, thank you. I placed a very substantial order with y'all earlier this week. Delta Spaccanapoli Ciliegia, Pilot Vanishing Point Blue Matte, Pilot E95s Burgundy and Ivory, Opus 88 Jazz Holiday, and LAMY 2000 Stainless Steel. I was wondering if you have any ink suggestions for each. Well, first off, thank you for supporting my team and my company. I really appreciate that. Not going to lie, may have been a factor in why I wanted to answer this question for you, because I'm grateful. Anyway, to continue with your question here, you have some parameters for me, which I appreciate. I don't want to repeat any colors within this set of 5, and I want them to at least somewhat match the look of the pens. For example, I'm thinking of putting Diamine Oxford Blue in the Vanishing Point and Writer's Blood in the E95s. Those are not set in stone by any means, so any words of advice on picking inks, be they specific product recommendations or just vague color suggestions for all 5 would be hugely appreciated. Okay, now I will say, you clarified quite a bit. but I was questioning it as I was coming up with my list. I came up with 2 inks per pen, which is 10 inks. That's a lot. You know, I could go on, but I limited myself. I didn't know if you meant colors in terms of like specific specific ink color, like a color, like, you know, you have Oxford blue and you have writer's blood. Those are 2 different, well, that's a bad example because they're blue and red. But if you meant like 2 different blues, are those 2 different colors? Or did you want completely different colors? So I stuck within the color notion that I wanted. I did not repeat anything, and I gave you 2 choices per pen. So you got 10 completely different inks, but some of them are the same color family per pen, if that makes sense. So hopefully that doesn't go outside. But you know what? I gave it a good effort here, so I think you'll appreciate either way. All right, starting out, that's a Spaccanapoli Ciliegia. Beautiful pen. I love this one. Great affordable pen. This is like an entry-level Delta pen. It's great for the money. I'm a big fan of it. So Ciliegia is mostly a burgundy pen. Like, it's a darker red pen. It does have some blue flecks in there. It's got some other things because it's like kind of that quartzy looking material. I could have gone with something blue, but I already mentioned a bunch of other blues on here. So I wanted to go red because that was going to be somewhat more different. So I went with some like wine kind of colors because it is red, but it's very much in that like purpley burgundy red kind of a family. And the E95s that you mentioned later is like a darker kind of blood red. So I went more of the maroon burgundy route. One of my favorites that I think would work great with this pen is Diamine Syrah. It's literally named after an ink. This is a really good one. So yes, I could strongly recommend that. No crazy properties or anything. It's just a nice looking like wine burgundy color, similar to the wine. And then Jacques Herbin Rouge Granat. So this is a nice deep red as well. That pretty comparable to Syrah, I think. Maybe a slightly less purple, but I haven't compared them side by side in person. But it is a different brand. It's a different option than Syrah. So I thought both of those could be nice choices. Pilot Vanishing Point Blue Matte. Well, I felt like I should give you a Pilot recommendation. So I went with Sukiyo. It is their darker blue. It's not as dark as the pen, but I think it would be acceptable. And it's just going to flow really well. It's going to look really nice in the bottle next to your pen. So that is one recommendation. And then the other one was, this is before actually, I read your question, but I kind of glanced over it. I had some pens in mind. Sorry, I had some inks in mind for some of these pens. And Oxford Blue was one of them before I like more specifically went back and reread it, that you already said Oxford Blue for the VP. And I was like, oh, we both thought the same thing. So that one is a given. Do that one. It's a great dark blue that would match that pen almost perfectly. All right, next one, Pilot E95s Burgundy and Ivory. The ivory part is not going to be easily color matched. And then it's got gold trim. So there's not a lot of gold inks, Diamine Gold and Sands maybe, but it's not really the same color. It's more of a yellow with some gold fleck. So I just went heavy into the burgundy. I think that's going to look the best. I did Diamine Writer's Blood. Again, same thing. I had that on my list before I saw your question. So the second half of your question there. Anyway, so that's a good one. Nice deep red. And then another deep red option, I went with Noodler's Red Black. So it's going to look a little bit different than Writer's Blood, but not that different. It's another deep red. So the E95s is a really deep red, and actually it was kind of hard to find some ink colors that matched a red that deep. So I think these are both good options for you. Opus 88 Jazz Holiday. This is a frosty clear pen, so you can go whatever route you want, honestly. But for me, I don't know, like the, Bumble from the claymation, like Rudolph, like the Yeti, like a white and blue combo is what jumped in my head. I don't know why. But when I saw this like frosty kind of white, I thought a lighter blue would be really nice to match that. I don't know. You literally could go with any color because anything would match pretty well, I think. But I went with some like blue, maybe slightly leaning turquoise. So I chose Diamine Marine, mostly because I just really like that ink. And I thought it was cool to mention. It shades really well too. And, Opus 88, they got nice nibs. They're Yovo nibs. If you get like a broad on there, oh, that marine is going to shade fantastic. The other one I had was Robert Oster Blue Water Ice. Again, maybe the name Ice had something to do with that, but it's also one of my favorite blue inks that I use all the time. So both of those would work really well. And then LAMY 2000 stainless steel, again, you can use anything in that one. But I was like, you know what, let's go into some grays. Let's lean into the grays. Now, the grays that I had were slightly darker grays because I think that that's going to work better. These are some grays that I really like. I have Diamine Graphite. And yes, I had a Diamine ink on every color on this list. I did not intend it to be that way. It's just how it worked out. Diamine's got a lot of good colors. What can I say? Diamine Graphite, it literally looks like pencil lead graphite, like a dark pencil lead. So that's really cool ink to use, and I think would work well with this pen. The other one is Noodler's Lexington Gray. That's another good long gray, good long gray. A good dark gray is what I meant to say. But it is also water resistant too. So this is just a very practical, good dark gray ink that I would recommend to anybody. So there you go. There's your recommendations. Again, thank you for supporting my team. Hope you enjoy those pens. That sounds like a good time. All right, question number 4. This is from MJ Kossel. Says, you mentioned keeping a spreadsheet of your pens. What kind of data do you track, or what have you found helpful to track? Well, it's a good question. It's going to be, some of the stuff is going to be a little unique to me, but what I've done is I've taken out all the things that are totally irrelevant to you. Like I have some labels that I have based on, I have some like drop downs, whether or not I've labeled my pens yet or not. That's so specific and not helpful. So I have like scrubbed a clean version with some samples. I also just have gobs and gobs of pens. So I like took a selection of some pens and narrowed it down so I can show you examples of what I keep, and I'll show it to you. So yeah, let's do that. I'm going to do a screen recording. I'm going to talk over it so that y'all can see what I have going on, and hopefully it's helpful to you. All right, here we go. So this is my beautiful spreadsheet. So I got a few things going on. Let me explain a little bit of what's happening. So it's my pens. I have a couple of legends here, I guess. Is my legend. Yellow is missing. That means I have misplaced a given pen and need to find it. It's not in my cabinet. Doesn't mean that it's gone forever. It means I could have it at home. I could have it in an old backpack somewhere. I just need to find it. And then orange needs research. So orange, that means that like I'm not 100% sure of the number of the pen or the name of it or whatever. I need to verify it because I'm trying to keep stuff accurate, but sometimes it gets confusing. So let's read the different columns. So I have the number. Is this a straight running number? How many pens do I have? Brands, pretty straightforward, whatever the main brand is. Model, whatever the name of the model is. The name or the body color. This is where it can get confusing because when you get different variants of things, sometimes you're like, is it the model? Is it the name that's the variant? I don't know, it gets confusing. And then one thing that's difficult to keep track of, and I certainly do not have this fully up to date, is whether it's a special edition, limited production, whatever it's called. I try to keep track of that. That's its own thing. You probably don't need to worry about that, but I usually try to, just from my own records. Limited edition number. So if it's a certain number out of a certain number, it's just nice to have a record of that. The year that it came out can be helpful, or the year that I acquired it, I guess. You can see I've got a lot of spaces here, so I haven't been perfect about that one. This next column might be specific to me. Is it a Goulet exclusive or not? That's helpful because we have a lot of Goulet exclusives and we are actually working on a master list of all the Goulet exclusives we've ever done, but it's a lot and it spans 15 years. So we're working on compiling that, but I figured at least of the ones that I keep, I try to keep one of everything. I've not been perfect about that, but I try to keep one of everything that we have as exclusives. Trim color, there can be a lot of different trim colors. It's kind of ridiculous. Like, look at this gunmetal here. You can see how many different trims there are. And some of them are like gunmetal, ruthenium. It's like those are the same thing, basically. Anyway, some brands call it like matte silver. Other brands call it like silver matte. It's like, Do I have 2 separate tags for those? I don't know. You do it however you want. Trim color though, because sometimes I have the same pen, but it's different trims. So I needed 2 different variants. Nib size. There can be a lot of different nib sizes. Look at all these. Isn't that fun? All kinds of different nibs. Nib type, stainless steel. You're like, how many different types can there be? A decent number. And this is where I do have some almost by accident, but no, I do have some that are like not fountain pens, ballpoint pens, pencils, roller balls, whatever. So that just put it as a nib type. It's technically not a nib, but I put it there anyway. The retail value, or you could put like whatever you paid for it, whatever it is. I'm a special use case because I'm a retailer, but whatever the value of the pen was at the time that I acquired it, that's what I put there. The purchase date, when I got the pen, and I have this other column here. I recently added this one because Rachel wanted to incorporate her collection into mine so we can have like one centralized record of things. So anything that's her pen, I put it there. So like a couple of these columns are probably not going to be that necessary for you all. But you know, it at least gives you some idea. So I have like Benus, you know, I've got different models, different colors. Some are special editions, some are not. So you can kind of see all that stuff at a glance, different prices, different times. Yeah, so like my Conklin here, right? Bohemian Twilight, that's an exclusive of ours. It's a limited edition, but it's not a numbered limited edition, so I didn't put a number there. It was this year and the price and all that kind of stuff. So very helpful. Other ones here, like this All-American Ebony. That is, I think it might have been a limited edition. So I may need to like, anything that's blank here, I probably need to like, make it orange. Anyway, I'm not going to go through and do this. This is not even my actual spreadsheet. So anything I change here is not even going to be helpful for me. Anyway, so you can see the number there. Yep, that's number 000. So, yep, other ones. Let's see here. This is a good example here. I have an Esterbrook. It's a vintage. I think it's a Model J, but it doesn't say on it. I've not researched it thoroughly enough yet, but I'm pretty sure it's a Model J, so I put it with a question mark. This other one's my Keras Customs Fountain K. This gray one. This is the one that I'm sure like 4 people watching this will even have a clue what I'm talking about. This is a brand that we used to carry, but they've since gone more or less kind of like solo. Like I don't know that they're selling through retailers anymore. They were selling direct and they were doing Kickstarters. Amicable, but we don't carry the brand anymore. To durability test it, I had chucked it across the parking lot and then ran over it with my car. That's the pen. So I don't know where it is, but wherever it is, I'm sure it's held up well because I abused it pretty good. LAMYs. So I had a whole bunch of LAMYs here. I'm not just flexing. This is actually cut down quite a bit, this list. But you can see here is like a whole bunch of different 2000s, for example. But then it's like, okay, they all look similar. But then it's like, boom, all these different special nibs, right? And then I have a couple of limited editions in there. Scroll down a little bit. You know, this one here, I made orange because, you know, I question my own data entry here. I have the Scala and the Piano Red. Are they really both number 495 out of 1500? It's possible, but that seems really specific. So did I just duplicate that? I might have. So I'm going to double check those. Let's see here. What else? You know, a bunch of exclusives here. I wanted to give you some examples of those. You know, Pilot, I have different ones. Some I have vintage, you know, stuff that I didn't even carry. That stuff gets interesting. And the prices are even more important there because like I might have bought that at a pen show or I might have acquired that, you know, in a brick and mortar store while I was traveling somewhere. So those can get kind of tricky. And then let's see here. This is a good example. So like Retro 51, our Fire and Dice pen. I ended up with a lot of proofs. So like these are not numbered, these are not final editions, but with like different trim finishes, different design, you know, edits and stuff like that. They're obviously all exclusive, but I end up with a bunch of different versions of the same pen. So that's part of where like labeling stuff becomes really important because honestly, sometimes I get proofs and I have like 5 different proofs of a pen. And then I look at it and I'm like, which one was the final one that we actually ended up doing? It's like, that's the one that I need to reference more for like videos and stuff like that. I should probably need to label which one's like not the actual final version, but is kind of close. So yeah. And then I got some other ones that are like, this one here, I don't know what to do with this one. I made a note over here that I broke it. You know, I ended up dropping the pen and literally the cap snapped. The center band is still on the pen, but the cap snapped right off of it. So I'm like, I still have the pen, But I don't know. Do I like take it off the catalog? I don't know. What do y'all think I should do? I don't break a lot of pens, but every now and then there's one I break or lose like for good. So I don't know what to do with those ones. Maybe I just need to mark it somehow else. But yeah, there you go. That's more or less how it works. This is not my whole collection, but it's still a lot of pens. So one last thing that I almost forgot to mention, but I wanted to point out, when I showed you the nib sizes here, I just showed a drop down and it's like, what is all this stuff? So that's like the one thing with the trim, color, the nib size, nib type, that I did is I had created, a tab over here for nibs, and I wrote out every single size of potential nib that there was. And same thing with, what's it called? These other ones. So if you don't want to have to write in your spreadsheet, I did this so long ago, I don't even remember how I set it up. But there's different ways to do it. You can have it set up where it's like a drop down, you just like copy it over, or you can have it be where it's like data validation or something, and it's referencing a different sheet within your spreadsheet, or a different tab within your spreadsheet. In this instance, for these ones, I had set them up as a separate tab. And so, I just want to point that out. I wish I remembered how I actually set this up because it was so long ago, and I don't do this kind of stuff in Excel every day, so I don't even understand it well enough to explain it. But I figured it out at one point. Anyway, that's all referencing the stuff on the other tab. That's all I wanted to say. So, I can understand if you don't know spreadsheets at all, you'd be like, can you just like make a copy of this and provide it for me, Brian? I'll think about it, but it's going to need some cleanup and it's going to need some other things. So anyway, that's what I got. Let me know your thoughts. Hopefully that was helpful to you. Last question I have, this is number 5. This is from Andreas Blahaus, 3602. Says, that was a great response on the development of your business. You come across as a great leader. Thank you. I didn't just take this because of flattery, but I will accept it. I remember one episode you mentioned a leadership book that you were reading. Do you have any recommendations of good books that you've read that helped you adjust as your business grew? Oh my gosh. I've read so many books over the years. Honestly, a lot of them kind of blur together. I did make a list though. I've done lists before. Honestly, it was easier just for me to write the books down than to try to find where I've talked about it. So I will mention some books again. Now I will say, now that I have a lot of perspective, like this is not an endorsement of the author. This is not anything. Like I was much more of like looking up to the people that wrote the books as mentors in my early days of business. These days, I'm like, people get into some weird stuff. And I definitely do not have the time to like research their whole life. But if they read a good book and there's some good principles out of it, okay, I'll read it. I'll take the principles. I'm not looking up to the person necessarily who wrote it. So these days I feel like you have to have disclaimers for everything because a lot of people have gotten into some weird stuff. So I have definitely not vetted. Some of these people have gone off in directions that I'm not as crazy about. So, and again, I'm purely looking at the book and the content of what they had. So I'll explain all that. But anyway, I'll at least talk to the books. Some of these are very specific to like what hit me at the right time. I think the important thing is like, there is no one book that tells you everything. There are some books that like really hit at a good time when I was going through something, trying to figure it out, and a bunch of stuff I was able to apply and it ended up being helpful. Doesn't mean it's the right book for everybody. I had heard somewhere along the way that there's like 11,000 business productivity books published every single year on top of what's already there. So there's just more books than you could possibly imagine, which is probably why you're asking me for help. But this is by no means an endorsement. I have no affiliation with any of these people. I just have some that I've like, okay, kind of stood the test of time or have been historically relevant to how we set up things at Goulet Pens. So one was a book called The Dip by Seth Godin. He's a big marketing guy. He's on a ton of books, and that book's a really short one. The concepts are very basic, but it just hit me at the right time. This one concept in particular was talking about like the whole concept of the dip is like, you get some effort as especially if you're starting a business or some new thing. You get some progress and then there's a dip where things get harder. And that dip is usually what happens before the thing is really about to start to take off. And most people quit in the dip when you really should like persevere and ride it out and make sure that it's actually going to happen. Now, of course, in starting a business, you're like, yeah, I just got to push through. Well, what was equally helpful in that book is it talked about something like not everything is going to come out of the dip. make sure you're not getting caught. He called it a cul-de-sac. So he's like, make sure you don't get caught in a cul-de-sac and you're just going around and around and doing the same stuff and you're never going to get anywhere. So it's important to discern the two of those things. Now, how do you actually know? Well, that's where experience comes in. But that was helpful for me at the time because I had been making pens and trying to sell them at craft fairs and, other types of shows and stuff like that. And it was in a cul-de-sac. I was getting nowhere with that. There was some interest, but I was never able to get it off the ground. But then I recognized that. And when the fountain pen thing started to really take off, I recognized like, oh, I'm now pulling out of the dip for the business as a whole, but making pens is the cul-de-sac. I need to be retailing and, doing social media and stuff like that. So at the time that I read that book, this was in 2009, it was exactly what I needed to hear at the time. I don't remember anything else from the book. I have not touched it since, but all it did was help me to realize I got to stop making pens and I got to retail fountain pens. Boom. Another book Gary Vaynerchuk has written. I do not like the way that, he's still fine, but he's really gone the way of like crypto and NFTs and all this. I'm not into that at all. So I don't watch any of his stuff anymore. But he wrote a book called Crush It. And I read that also in 2009. And it was a completely game changing for me at the time because what he did in the wine kind of like, video shooting, blogging, like that type of stuff, he did exactly what I do now with fountain pens. And I saw his stuff and I saw the example and I was like, that's exactly what I could do with fountain pens. I didn't know fountain pens. I had to learn everything along the way, but it's like, I saw what he did and I was like, that's what's needed in the fountain pen world for, this can continue to the next generation, basically. Because everybody that was in fountain pens at the time had grown up with them or used them in school or whatever. I was like, how's anybody going to learn about fountain pens? These new millennials, which I am. And so that book, reading it at that time, it just clicked. Gary Vaynerchuk is way too intense for me and he's way more money hungry than I am and all that kind of stuff. But he's done some things right. So it hit me at the right time. Another one, some disclaimers too. This is a Dave Ramsey book. I'm not a big fan of Dave Ramsey and politics and all that kind of stuff. He's super on the religious side. Try to separate all that stuff out. He wrote a book called EntreLeadership, which is largely swept of a lot of that stuff. It's, so there are some good principles that he talks about there from a leadership standpoint that at the time hit really good because I had no structure. I had no idea how to manage people. The business was growing. We were hiring people. We were leading a bunch of young people. I was young. I had no management experience. It gave me what I needed at the time. But again, he's one who's a strong personality. His radio show, it's a bit wacky. But anyway, so separate the guy, whatever. His book, EntreLeadership, was really, really solid though. And I liked it a lot. He did have one concept in there called the 5 Enemies of Unity. And we still use that today. That is rock solid. Another one, Jim Collins, Good to Great. That one's pretty classic at this point. That one covers like larger businesses mostly, but the whole concept is that he studied, large public businesses that were largely stagnant for like a 15-year period and then had an above average market growth for 15 years. And it was like, what is that? What caused that to go from doing okay to doing great? Analyzed all those things and pulled some principles out of the book. In particular, the thing that we've used the most out of that book has been what's called the Stockdale paradox, which, comes from, he was a veteran, I believe, in the Vietnam War. Forgive me, I'm light on the details. I haven't read this in a while. But was he a general, I think? I can't remember. Forgive me. But this guy, veteran Stockdale, he was a POW. He was in a prisoner camp for I think it was 3 years or something like that. Maybe it was longer. And he talked about how the people that were not able to basically make it through the camp, that gave up and ultimately died, they were the ones that had hope about maybe we'll get out by Christmas. Maybe we'll get out by, the next thing, the new year. Maybe they kept on having short-term hope and getting let down constantly, and they just lost their will. So his whole paradox is you never lose sight of your present reality, no matter how bad it is, but always keep hope for the future. So his thing was yep, this sucks. I'm just going to take it a day at a time. We're in it, and I'm not going to get I'm not going to put all my hope in something that could potentially happen if it never does. So it's like those people who just like take it and kind of trudge through it, but still know that like, I'm going to look forward to the future. So, COVID, tariffs, all these things like that comes up a lot in our business. So anyway, and there's other good stuff in that book too. I'll move it along because I realize I'm talking a lot. Another one is called The Advantage by Pat Lencioni. He's written a ton of books, Death by Meeting and stuff like that have been, fairly classic. But that book was kind of like a capstone book for like 10 of his other books. So there's this one Pat Lencioni book that you want to read. It's called The Advantage. It's really good. That one, it put some basic like meeting rhythm and structure in place and had some other things in there that I think was really helpful for us to like structure how we kind of mechanically run some of the things in the business. Because, again, we started out, we were bringing our kids to the shop. We had no meetings. We were just like yelling at each other as things that were happening. And I was like, we need a little structure. So that was helpful at the time. And then another one is The Ideal Team Player by Pat Lencioni. That's another good one that talks about humble, hungry, and smart, 3 principles that you want to have as a team, as individuals, and it goes into detail about that. But that one's been pretty good. Brene Brown, Dare to Lead. That's another good one that talks about like vulnerability, trust, all those types of things. So once we had like more of a solid structure and we just had people and leadership and stuff like that, that was a good one to get onto like some more of the like soft skills and stuff like that. So Brene Brown, like Power of Vulnerability as well, has been helpful. And then the last one I have is a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. So this one, I wish that I had read it sooner because I probably would have leaned a lot harder into this one. It's basically a whole structure. It's called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's very much a structure of like, here's how you run a small business. It talks about meeting structures. It calls about what do you call your different goals and all these kind of things, how you hold accountable. Here's the sheets that you use to run your meetings. Super tactile, super helpful. We had already implemented a lot of our own stuff and gotten into a rhythm where, we could move and adopt that one, but we already had a lot of overlap. So we use a lot of the basic same principles. We ultimately ended up kind of patchworking and building our own, structure that then I read Traction and I was like, oh, this is pretty much what this is. Well, I wish I'd had this. But anyway, so anybody starting out in a business, I would strongly suggest reading Traction and consider that. So there you go. I did not plan on explaining each book in such detail. That was all off the top of my head, but there you go. You can tell some of that stuck because I still remember it. Most of these books, I've first read them well over a decade ago. And so, yeah, hopefully that helps. Anyway, I keep saying that. Let's go to the pen spotlight. So let's talk Lord of the Rings, huh? Full disclaimer. I am not very familiar with Lord of the Rings. I'm not even going to try to fake it. Forgive me if I mispronounce anything, say anything wrong, have no context. I have literally nothing to add for what any of this means. It's just not been on my radar. I've talked many times about how I'm not a fiction reader, but I'm also not a fiction movie goer very much either. So I'm one of the most ignorant people about Lord of the Rings that you'll ever meet. But anyway, I at least can show you these pens and show you what they're all about. So hopefully, if you're interested in these things, you will understand the details of all these things way more than I will. But anyway, there are 3 different pen and ink sets. There are some inks that are 10 milliliters here, which come in some cool packaging. And then there are some 28 mils. I didn't grab those standalone ones because they look the same as what's in here. So I just wanted to keep it less cluttered. So anyway, they're all different. All the packaging is completely different on every single product. So that's one thing. Ferris Wheel Press does a phenomenal job with their packaging. I mean, even just a 10 ml bottle of ink, how cool is this? It's got like gold foil on here. It looks so good, which is why, I mentioned earlier, it's like if you want to get a gift, oh my gosh, this is a great gift. Even if this is a tiny little bottle, go for it. Okay, I want to open this up, but I do not want to damage it. Give me a second. Okay. There you go. It's kind of a familiar experience with Ferris Wheel Press if you're into it. Look at that nice little flap there. Pull the ink out. Look, it's got a map there that's relevant to this, I'm assuming. Nice looking bottle. This is a little 10 ml bottle, but look how cool that is. So anyway, it's shimmer. So That's one little example there, so I'm not going to pull them all out. We have pictures and details and stuff on the website that are going to show it better than I can right here, but I did want to at least show you like what the unboxing experience is like and how cool that looks, right? Okay, so those are the 10 mil inks. They're all different. So we have, yeah, because it is confusing because the pen and ink combos are named basically for the pens, and then the ink are named something different. So the ink is within the set. So you have Sauron, which is the pen name, and then you have Shadows of Mordor, which is the ink name. And Sauron is in Mordor, right? I really know nothing. Okay, Gandalf, I know he has a beard. And there's 2 different versions, apparently. This is terrible. I really shouldn't even try to talk about it. Okay, look, there's the white and the silver. That I know. Gandalf, I don't know anything about. Isn't it like one good, one bad? I gotta stop this. I'm not even getting answers. Okay, I'm just showing my ignorance. Gandalf and Dawning Silver, they match up. And then Ringbearer and Verdant Voyage. So there's that. It's like an elven kind of a theme. I'm assuming elves, right? Elves? No, they're hobbits. Gosh, I'm sorry. Y'all are just cringing so bad. Just destroy me in the comments, if you will. I mean, I deserve it. All right, let me show you the pens because each one is different. Packaging, you know, just so you can see. You're not gonna be able to see all this too much, especially if you're like watching on your phone or whatever, but super nice gold foil. Like this packaging is really like next level. And I know this isn't like the cheapest pen in the world, but still there's a lot of $200 pens that do not look this well packaged. There you go. It's a little bottom heavy because you got the ink. So now you can see here what the 28 mil bottle of ink looks like. And it comes in its own box. It's not a box that has like clear packaging like this. It's like just a cardboard. I think we show it on the site. There you go. So look at that. It looks so good. And then Ferris Wheel Press on the back. Pretty neat. So this is a dark green ink with shimmer. The pen itself, so this is the Bijou. We don't carry the Bijou regularly, but it's definitely a thing that they offer. What's really cool though is the center band with the ring. How cool is that? Honestly, even if you don't write with the pen, just the presentation of this, if you're a diehard Lord of the Rings fan, is phenomenal. And then it's really cool. It's got a custom inscription on each pen. They're all different. We have pictures of them that you can see even better, but you know. See, okay, that's better. There you go. So you can see the inscription there. It is related to this pen. I don't know what any of it means. And then you've got a custom nib inscription as well. Now, the pen can technically post, but it's metal threads on a lacquered metal body, and it can scratch. So I would not do that. Don't ask me how I know that. It's because we ruined one. On purpose, I did it. Not a Lord of the Rings one. I didn't take any of those out of circulation. But we had another Bijou pen, and I was like, this seems like it might scratch. Let's see what it does. And it definitely scratched. And I was like, well, that's not good, because somebody's definitely going to do that. Anyway, so there's that. Now, what's interesting is it does come with a separate nib. So this nib, it's like a separate nib unit, right? I don't know who makes them. They don't say, but they're decent nibs. Like I've checked them all. They write smoothly. Now this one is called Tengwar. I don't know what that means. Is that a Lord of the Rings term? I don't know, but it's basically a Japanese fude nib. The nib is just like, it's bent. So if you want to get like a wide kind of swath of ink, you can get that. It's pretty interesting. Or you can write with it kind of higher up and you get just more of a fine line. So there's that. And that's that one. The nibs are going to be the same. So it comes with a medium nib installed on it, and it comes with that Tengwar nib separately. Let me go ahead and just show you the packaging here for the Dawning Silver, or the Dawning Silver is the ink, but for Gandalf, pretty cool. That looks pretty rad. That's a good looking pen. And then there's your grip, which is different and relevant to the pen at hand. And then the inscription, maybe the inscription's not different on each nib. I don't recall. But it's a custom inscription for this pen, for sure. Okay. I'll package all these up later off camera because we're already going long enough. And Sauron. Nice deep, deep red. Looks really cool. All these look pretty phenomenal. Again, I'm not a big Lord of the Rings fan. I think this looks rad. There you go. There's your custom grip. Ta-da. There's Sauron right there. Yeah, so there you go. It is a standard international cartridge converter. It does come with a converter. It's got a little agitator in it, which is fun. And then it takes cartridges as well. I don't think it actually comes with a cartridge. I didn't check. It's underneath. It does not come with a cartridge, but there's a bottle of ink packaged with it. So I guess they figured that's going to be good enough. So yeah, the Bijou, again, we don't stock it regularly, but we do have some information up on the site about it. I find the medium nib to be pretty smooth. I'm not doing like a nib nook and all that kind of stuff just because it's a limited thing. And I did want to at least show you how they wrote. So I've got some ink set aside here. So I wanted to at least dip test them and show you how the two different nibs look. So which one should I do? I want to do the Gandalf because I think that looks really cool. So I'll set those aside. I'm going to set the inks out of frame so I can make myself some room. Now, we did create some like assets and put these on the website so I can at least show you Shadows of Mordor, Dawning Silver, Verdant Voyage. They're all shimmery. Shadows of Mordor is like a deeper burgundy red, kind of matches the pen, but it's very heavy on the sheen. So it really, really lightens it up a lot. Dawning Silver, it's gray ink. It's got a little bit of red sheen to it, which is kind of neat. And silver shimmer. And Verdant Voyage is a green with some gold shimmer. So here are swabs of the three together. So there's your Dawning Silver, Verdant Voyage, and then there's Shadows of Mordor. So you can see what that looks like. And we do different assets. This is all on Tomoe paper, by the way. We do different assets like this because it's helpsful to see how they look. That was a very obvious statement. There's Verdant Voyage, and then there's the splatters with Verdant Voyage, which looks pretty cool. Shows, the idea of the shading. Now we're like dumping the ink on here, but it shows how drastic it can look. And then it's got like a little bit of red sheen. And then that shimmer, of course. Shadows of Mordor. This is the one that's probably like the most like, what is that ink? Because this sheen is so heavy. And it really is. It basically kind of looks like a gold ink almost, with some red undertones, I guess. So there you go. That looks pretty cool. And then Dawning Silver, more of a straight up silver, but it's got some sheen in there. It's a nice looking shimmer. Pretty cool. So if you like the inks and you don't like the pens at all, you can just get the ink, and I think you'd be happy. Okay, so I grabbed some samples of each of these just so I don't want to, mess up the bottles and all that kind of stuff. So let me grab my Gandalf and got my pad of paper here. So I'll just do a quick little test. Now, I've already shown you what the ink kind of looks like, but I can at least write with it and then talk about how it looks or how it feels, I guess. Okay, what do I want to ink up? I'm going to do the matching one. Dawning Silver. So I'm just going to give it a little dip. Now, this may not be the full accurate representation of how it will flow in the pen once it's all totally good and up to speed, but it'll at least give you an idea, and it'll give me a sense of the writing feel as well. Okay, so Ferris Wheel Press. Bijou. And this is a medium nib. It's very smooth. Very smooth. It's not gushing wet. I can tell that I've got ink in the feed. Maybe I'll Maybe I'll dip it again a little bit just to make sure. It's pretty well saturated. It's not an absolute gusher. So the nib seems, I wouldn't say stingy, but it seems moderate. And then what ink is this? This is the Lord of the Rings, right? And Dawning, what is it again? Dawning Silver, gosh. Silver. Okay. Now, if you want to change out the nib, take the converter off because we're not using that at the moment. You would probably want to clean the pen because, you know, it's going to have ink in it. But it just unscrews. So I'm just going to grab it with a paper towel because I don't want to get any more ink on my fingers than I have to. You can just unscrew the grip right off. Pretty easy. So it's got, you know, the feed right there. I don't know if anything else is compatible fitting on here. I don't believe so. But you have your other nib at least. So this one is just going to screw right in here like this. There we go. And then I'm going to put it back on the pen and we'll dip it and we'll give it a go. I'm going to use a different ink though, because why not? Which one should I do? Take a guess. I'm going to do, no, Shadows of Mordor. Shadow of Mordor. Okay. Go. Give it a little shake because it's got the shimmer in it. I forgot to shake the other one. But that's okay. We're not necessarily going for ink accuracy here. We're going for pen feel. All right. I got a really good saturation there. I need to set this somewhere because it's inked. Okay. All right. I'm not a Fude or Tengwar nib master here. So I'm going to hold it at a high angle first. So we'll go Ferris. Oh, this is weird to write with because I normally hold my pen lower. Wheel Press. Oh my gosh, I cannot get that right. Bijou Tengwar nib. It's got a little more tooth to it holding it up like this. Maybe it's not meant to be held up quite that much. Lord of the Rings. So I really cannot write and talk at the same time. Shadows of Mordor. Shadow of Mordor. I keep wanting to call it Shadow. Shadows of Mordor. Okay. Boom. And then if I want to hold it, so here, this is a high angle. Do some X's, some little figure eights, right? And then just some like things like that. I'll go ahead and just top it off just to make sure. And let's go low angle. So I want to hold it, you know, probably around 40 degree angle maybe. It's going to be crazy though. So low angle. This is with the same nib, y'all. Now, is there like a gradation? Is there like a mid angle? Yeah, sort of. It's not like 100% graduated, so it's like it's going to be really, really wide a little bit, and then it's going to get pretty thin. So there's going to be a very fine point in there with the mid angle. So I'm just going to try, you know, well, this is your mid angle, I guess. So you can get some different looks, but if you're trying to get like, yeah, I want to get like a broad nib, that's going to be kind of tough. You can get like that really easy, that really easy. This is a little tougher. But so I'm just going to drag it across. I'm going to get a really wide swath, and then I'm going to raise my hand up as I'm dragging it across, just to show you. And then I'll go the opposite way. My mic is getting in the way. Oh my gosh, this is really hard to do. Okay, I drop it down. So there is some graduation that happens. But there you go. That is the Ferris Wheel Press Bijou, Lord of the Rings. Again, a lot of it's theming, but the theming is so on point. Even if you never write with the pen, I think it's really cool. If you have a die-hard Lord of the Rings fan, they're probably going to love this thing, even if they never want to write with the pen. So that's it. Nibs write pretty well, I got to say. Ink feels pretty good. Not crazy wet. Very kind of middle of the road. Not gushing, not dry. Just solid performer. All right, Brian's Adventures here. Well, I've gone so much longer than I planned on this episode, but I have a couple things I can mention, I guess. So I showed last week, we had the bird, the Menace, who has a friend, Dennis. Well, maybe I showed that 2 weeks ago. I can't remember, it all blurs together. Either way, I was not able to get a picture of Dennis and the Menace together, and now I have not seen them all week. I think literally the Menace was just lonely and was just looking for a companion, was excited about finding a friend, and then found a friend, and the two of them were like kind of playing together a little bit, enjoying the birdseed, and now they're like, gone. Are they going to come back? I don't know. I really don't know the habits of goldfinches, but either way, I haven't seen them. So if I do find them together again, I will try to capture them so I can show you all, but this is two birds that look kind of the same. You're not missing much. Anyway, so that happened. Not a lot of exciting stuff to talk about. Cleaning and reorganizing the house a lot. It's really exciting, but I've got like clothes that I wore when I lost a ton of weight cycling like 11 years ago. You can see them in the old videos. You're like, wow, Brian looks so much more fit and younger. That's because I was. I was exercising like crazy to be like that. And I just don't have the time for that anymore. So yeah, I have some clothes that like I only fit in during that time. And I'm like, you know what? It's been a decade. I think I can get rid of these. Or now it's like, I think I can give these to my kids now because they're about that size. But anyway, it was good to just to clean up some old stuff. So that felt pretty good. We're changing over to our fall decorations. Not technically fall yet, but it's close enough. It's done. I woke up and rode my bike this morning and it was 50 degrees out. And I was like, that's cooler. This does not feel like summer. But anyway, fewer bugs. I'm loving it. I love fall. Fall is my favorite season. So, but with fall, our fall decoration comes our fall birds. Rachel's got her little target birds that she loves to set out. We have so many of them. And yeah, we have enough for every season and sort of some in between seasons as well. So the fall birds are out. And then last thing I have is, I had a project that I was working on that I finished. That's pretty cool. I can't remember if I mentioned this before or not. Forgive me if I have. But I mentioned I'm making a charcuterie board for a friend's wedding. I say charcuterie board. It is a charcuterie log. It's more like a surfboard. It is almost 8 feet long, 17 inches wide, and about 3 inches thick. It's a giant piece of white oak that I got from my wood guy that I know, who finds locally felled trees here in the city of Richmond, where we are, whether it's trees that fell in a storm or maybe the city was taking down trees for some reason. He gets those from arborists and he slabs them up, cuts them on a sawmill, puts them in a vacuum kiln, and then people can use it for like natural edge furniture and stuff like that. So I love that stuff. So I have some. So I'm actually, I guess, loaning this to my friend, because what are they going to do with a board this size afterwards? So I'm loaning it to them for the wedding. So I sanded it all up, put a nice finish on it. So they're going to use this thing. They're going to put on some like old oak barrels and then have it as one giant charcuterie board for the whole wedding reception. So pretty cool. Glad I could do that, as sort of a gift of sorts to them. We'll still get like an actual gift, but it's still like just a favor for somebody. But yeah, and it's made out of white oak, which is heavy as crud. It's a very heavy wood. So a board that size is like, wow, this thing is hard. I mean, that board has got to weigh 80, 90 pounds. It's so heavy. Yep. So that's that. That's what I've been up to. I'm going to wrap it up, but I do have a fun fact for you. So stick around for that. So thanks for watching. Continue to ask me great questions. I've been getting a lot of really good questions. I'm excited about that. Almost to the point where I can't answer all these questions. So I'm saving them up. in case I get a dry spell, pull them back out. That's it. Thanks for subscribing, YouTube, TikTok, all that stuff. We're trying to post everywhere. There's a lot of noise out there. So just any way you can share, like, comment, whatever. It all helps the algorithm. And then we get in front of more people, which is always good. Of course, you can check out gouletpens.com for all your fountain pen needs, but you know that at this point if you're watching this far. Okay, my fun fact for this week. I had to try really hard. I sort of deep dove a little bit on this. I couldn't help myself. But I was like, you know what? I know white oak is used a lot in coopering, and that's barrel making. And it's like, really, I knew it was important for like whiskey and bourbon, but I didn't quite understand why or how. Oh my gosh. There's deep dives you can get into on that like crazy. I'm not a big like drinker either. So it's like some of the chemistry behind that is kind of cool. And more so I'm like, what is it about the wood that makes that difference? It's so much more than I could ever realize. But I'll try and give you a little synopsis of some of it because it's just really cool. So I did find this one article that was really helpful from an online site, I guess, called the Whiskey Advocate. It's called Why and How Oak Matters in Whiskey. So we'll link to that in the video description. But just know I basically just ripped all this right off their site, so they deserve full credit. But I wanted to give it a little synopsis. So there are over 600 species in the Quercus genus, which is the oak genus. Without time and oak barrels, whiskey would remain white and fiery, devoid of toasty, caramel, nutty, or vanilla notes. It's simple. Without oak, there is no whiskey as we know it today. The specific type of oak, the origin of the tree, and all the finer points of its treatment during production will influence the flavors that the barrel imparts, whether it's vanilla, citrus, zest, baking spices, dark red fruits, or a myriad of other possibilities. It's essentially endless. So it says, to understand whiskey, you must understand oak. About halfway through, so hang with me. Oak barrels go back as far as the Roman Empire. It has advantages of strength and durability and liquid tightness. The cells of white oak contain tyloses, which are outgrowths on parenchyma cells of the tree's xylem. I don't know what any of that means. I studied it at one point, but I never understood it then, and I don't now. These cells dam up the vascular tissue, and it is these clogged pores that prevent an oak cask from leaking. So that's kind of cool. Not all woods are good for that. The three manipulatives of stave and barrel creation that impacts resulting flavors include how long you dry the wood outdoors, also known as seasoning, how long do you toast it, like bake it essentially, and how long do you char it. When you char a barrel, you break down the hemicellulose into its 10 constituent sugars, which caramelize in a very tight layer underneath the char in existing unburned wood. And then as heat radiates and cools, you get the breakdown of lignin into veillin, and tannic acids begin to turn the color red. So the heat passes through the barrel and you get different effects. That is just a surface glossing over of some of what goes into oak and oak prepping. And there's different kinds depending on if it was used for any other type of thing like sherry or whatever, because some of those, if you reuse the barrels, can be used. Apparently, bourbon barrels have to be new barrels. What's for bourbon, but whiskey can use other things. So I didn't know. This is a whole world. I've done like a bourbon tasting before, and it was all just tasted like burning in my mouth because I'm not sophisticated. But I know a lot of y'all can be fans of this kind of stuff. It's really cool, but it definitely has to do a lot with the wood and the chemistry and all that kind of stuff behind it. I just thought that was really cool. So if nothing else, I just said a bunch of words to you that maybe mean more to you than me, but it's cool and wood is awesome. So especially white oak. That's all I have for you this week. Now I'm going to wish you well. Thanks for watching and right on.